How can a simple idea become a catalyst for global change? This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are disrupting for good. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nicole Jansen, your host, and our guest today is Kenton Lee. And he is the founder of Because International, which is an innovative accelerator that uses products as solutions to alleviate poverty. And today we're going to talk about a simple idea that he came up with and where that's gone. It's actually started a movement and how it's impacted children around the world. And it's just such a great story. So I can't wait to have him share it. We're also going to explore the higher calling of entrepreneurship and why it's necessary that we master the art of business and we, put ourselves out there, and also talking about stewardship for the greater good. And so with that, Kenton, welcome to Leaders Transformation. We're glad you're here today.
Nicole, it is wonderful to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited to share my story today.
Oh, well, I'm excited for you to share it. And before you do, we do want to do a shout out to Andrew Gottlieb, who introduced both of us. And Andrew was actually a guest in episode 381. And we talked about how he does business for the greater good. And that's through his firm, No Typical Moments. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, then I encourage you to go check out episode 381. And of course, it's on our website at leadersoftransformation.com and every listening platform, podcast listening platform out there. Speaking of which, our podcast is actually brought to you by my training and coaching company, and that is Leaders of Transformation. So if you are a leader who wants to be better, do better, make a greater impact in the world, then I encourage you to go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching. And you'll learn a little bit more about the types of coaching that I provide, and we can actually schedule a time there. There's a link to my calendar, and we can schedule a time to chat about where you're at, where you want to go, and the impact you want to make, and then what's it going to take to get there. So I invite you to take advantage of that. That is free. All right, so let's talk about this brilliant idea, Kenton, that you came up with, and I just love how simple and yet profound it is. So tell us a story.
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, seems crazy to say, it's been a long time now, but I had just graduated college. I am born and raised in Idaho, and so I just graduated college, went to college here in Idaho. I'd never really been outside the US, but I really wanted to be a missionary. And so I thought, before I commit to a life overseas and kind of a missionary life, I should probably travel a little bit and see if I can even do it. I'm from a fairly small town, and there aren't too many folks here in Idaho, so I just thought I should probably get a little more experience with that. And I'm glad I did. So I went to, right after college, went to Ecuador for 6 months, and then went to Kenya for 6 months. And again, I'm really glad I did, because I was very homesick. I loved travel. I could not picture myself living somewhere else other than Idaho. But I'm so glad I did these experiences. That really did change my life, and especially the certain moments that happened when I was in Kenya. So when I was in Kenya for those 6 months, I got to live and volunteer at a small orphanage about an hour outside of Nairobi. And it was probably 2 or 3 weeks into my time there, when all the kids and I were actually going to church. All the kids and I were walking down this dusty road in this village. It had kind of one road, so we're all walking down the road as we went to church. And there was a little girl walking next to me. She was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I'll never forget, she had on this beautiful white dress. But as I looked down at her as she walked next to me, I was absolutely shocked at how small her shoes were. She was wearing these shoes that were just way too small for her feet. They were so small, she had to cut open the front to let her toes stick out. And I don't know if she'd never worn these before, or if I just hadn't noticed it, or what, but this was really like the first time I was seeing this. And it really bothered me. It really kind of got to me. And kind of with new eyes, I looked around at the other kids to see what they were wearing on their feet. And many kids had no shoes. And then also a lot of kids had the same thing. They were wearing shoes that were way too small. And so they would cut open the front so that their toes could stick out. And, of all the things, again, I'm I'm kind of from a small town in Idaho. This was my first time in Africa. And in my first few weeks, I had seen many, many things that were very different to me and different than back home. But for some reason, this really stuck out to me. This really kind of got inside my heart and inside my gut. And so later that day, I asked the director of the orphanage, why do so many kids have shoes that don't fit? And he told me that more than a year before, they'd received a great donation of shoes and clothes and things, but they had not received any more donations since then. And that they were a very poor orphanage. They often barely had enough money for food. And so they couldn't afford to buy the kids new shoes, even cheap shoes or cheap flip-flops. They couldn't afford to buy the kids anything when they needed it. And he said, these are kids, like their feet are always growing. And just for some reason in that moment, and I'm not an engineer, I don't tinker with things, but for some reason in that moment, I just had this idea. What if there was a pair of shoes that could adjust and expand their size? What if there was a pair of shoes that could grow? It seems like that would maybe make sense for these kids who maybe they could afford one pair of shoes, but maybe they can't afford to have shoes or even have shoes donated every time their feet grow, and their feet are always growing. So what if there was a shoe that could grow with their feet? And so I wrote that down in a little journal that I had. I wrote that idea down. And once I got back home and I knew I wasn't going to be an overseas missionary, I still really wanted to do something. I wanted to do something to try to help, and especially to help kids. I'd seen so many amazing kids in Ecuador and Kenya, and I just wanted to try to do something to help kids. And so I went back to my journal, went back to this idea for a growing shoe, and decided that, hey, I think I could do this from home. I think this could be my mission, something that I could work on from here at home. And so I decided to jump in with it.
Wow. And like I said, it's such a simple idea and so obvious. And yet, so often we're so busy. You mentioned about like being with these kids and not noticing it. And all of a sudden you look down and go, well, wait a second. What about that? Let's start there. So that's really, really powerful. Now, this isn't going to help those that are listening in audio, but for the video, you have actually one of those shoes that you actually created.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Can you share it?
definitely. Yeah, for sure. So I'll give just a brief summary kind of the rest of the story, because it's so funny. It's so easy, and I'm so excited to show this. I'm showing it now. I'm so excited to show it. But basically, to go from that point where I had the idea and I kind of decided to jump in, I grabbed a few friends to join me. It then took us 6 years to get to this, to get
Wow.
to our final version, our first real batch. We made 3,000 pairs. It took us
That's
6 years to
persistence.
get there. We had lots of failure. It was some persistence, a little more user error, maybe. I just didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done anything like this before and failed many, many times. Lots of rejection, was trying to ask some people to help. And luckily, we did have many people that said yes and wanted to try to help us out. But a lot of people along the way said no, said it's not a good idea. It's not going to work. It's not possible. And so we kept going and kept going, and finally found the right partner, a shoe design company that loved our vision and decided to help us. They took us through a kind of a year-long design process and came out on the other end with the amazing prototype. We did some fundraising in my hometown with that prototype, and were able to have enough money to make 100 pairs of the prototype. Took those back to Kenya, put them in 4 different schools, had kids try them out for about a year, got some great feedback, and then ultimately that led to this first batch of 3,000 pairs of what we call the shoe that grows. So I'm not good at naming things. We just named it what it was, a shoe that grows. So this is the shoe that grows. For those that can see it, it looks like kind of a shoe sandal hybrid. So we designed this for warm weather countries. We didn't necessarily design it for a cold weather place, but for warm weather countries, it's a fantastic pair of shoes. And again, it kind of looks a little bit like a shoe sandal hybrid. But so the top portion here, the kids can actively adjust. There's we call it a hook. It actually looks like a number 5 a little bit, but it has, if you can picture the top part of a 5, We use that as a bit of a hook, and it can go inside of these loops. So there are 4 different loops here. So the kids can shorten it, shorten it if their feet are a little bit shorter. They can lengthen it as their feet grow longer. And then on the sides, for those watching and listening, you might be able to hear this little noise here. That's the classic sound of Velcro. So we have Velcro straps on the sides, over the top, and around the back. So the kids can actively adjust the top to where it feels comfortable, but the real growth actually comes in the bottom. And this is one of those things where it's such a simple idea, but and I'm sure I was not the first person to think of this, but nobody had done this before. And so we were so excited to try it and thrilled when it actually worked. But basically, you can see these little ridges here on the sides. They're on the front, on the sides and the back as well. There's some on the inside of the sole as well, of the bottom of the shoe. And basically, normal shoes are meant to hold their shape. We designed our shoe to have a little give. We just designed our shoe to unfold. So as the child's foot just naturally grows, they can adjust the top to where it feels comfortable. They would never adjust the bottom, but the bottom slowly unfolds to continue to fit their foot and provide
Wow, that's
that
cool.
coverage on the bottom. And so it's fun seeing kids wear these for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because when they receive them, they look a certain way. And then as they wear them, they really do grow and expand. And they kind of, as a mental picture, they kind of flatten out. The bottom kind of flattens. And so that they still have coverage on the bottom as they're walking. And so it's, again, such a simple idea, but no one had done it before. So we actually have 2 patents on our shoes. And in 2018, we won the US Patent and Trademark Office has a Patents for Humanity award that they awarded to our shoes. And so we were so honored to receive that. So it's a shoe that can grow 5 sizes. We make it out of compressed rubber, similar to a tire rubber. Excuse me. And the top is a synthetic leather. And so it's just 2 really durable materials. So it can last for years. Many kids wear them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I actually wore a pair every day myself for 5 years, and just loved them. It's a really good pair of shoes. And so, yeah, long story long, we were thrilled. My friends and I had started a nonprofit called Because International. The Shoe That Grows was our first project, trying to create this product that we wanted to try to use to help people and to try to alleviate poverty. And so we had made a first batch of 3,000 pairs, and this was back in 2015. And we just were over the moon, but this was very much just a hobby for us. I had a different full-time job. This was just kind of a passion project on the side. Until a few months later, we accidentally went viral. We had a story come out online about our shoes, our growing shoes, and it just sparked this wildfire of publicity. And so I quit my job. I started working with this full time. And in the last 7 years, since we've been going full time, we've distributed over 400,000 pairs of the Shoe That Grows to kids in over 100 countries. And it's just been an unexpected journey, but it's been such a pleasure working with the Shoe That Grows, and with a ton of great people to help get our shoes to kids who need them.
That is so cool. And you talk about by accident. There's nothing by accident for sure. So it's a brilliant idea. It's actually interesting though that sometimes there's like these brilliant ideas that fall flat and other ideas that fly. And I know that you also now have an accelerator where you help other entrepreneurs with great ideas. Do you have any thoughts on maybe like why some fly and some don't? And what's maybe
Yeah.
the secret sauce that you accidentally, had in that video that caused it to, or where you distributed it that caused it to really go?
Yeah, great question. First I'll say I am such a amateur entrepreneur and leader. There are so many others who are just so great at this kind of stuff, and I'm just barely scratching the surface. But in my experience, a couple of things I think helped us. The first was I was just really passionate about this, and that was because I saw it. I really think having a personal experience. When I had this idea, if people are familiar, and Nicole, if you're familiar with Tom's shoes,
Yes.
I love Tom's shoes. They're not perfect, but they're awesome, and they've given millions of shoes to kids around the world. So when I was doing this, Tom's shoes was very popular. It's kind of just gaining its popularity, and everybody thought they were just awesome. So I knew that kids needed shoes. Like, it wasn't like an unfamiliar thing. I'd probably seen some videos or something online or whatever about that kind of issue of kids not having enough shoes or the right shoes or any shoes. And so, but for me, like going to the orphanage, living in Kenya and Ecuador, seeing, especially in Kenya, seeing the kids, getting to know the kids became my friends. It wasn't just a project for me or something I saw in a video or read in a book. Like, these kids are really my friends, and I wanted, even though I wasn't going to live there, like I wasn't feeling called to live there full time. I knew I wanted to go back home, but I still wanted to do something to help my friends. And so I just became very passionate about this idea. I think that's why I stuck with it for the 6 years. I I loved these kids. I wanted to help them, and nobody could tell me this was a bad idea because I saw it. Like, I was there. I saw it, and I understood what the kids, like, what their context was, what they were going through, and I knew that a growing shoe would be a good solution to their problem. So I think that's one thing, is just kind of being confident, like being determined, having that persistence, like you said. And I think a lot of that comes from personal experience and just passion.
Yeah.
Nobody could tell me, even shoe people. We talked to people at Nike, and I mean, like, we talked to people at many shoe companies who had a lot more shoe experience than I did. And when they would tell me this isn't a good idea, I just didn't believe them. Like, I knew that it was, because I was there. I was at the orphanage and I saw it. And so that was a big part of it, was I knew it was a good idea. I just believed it. I really believed it. And it's amazing what a little, I was pretty naive and pretty simple and pretty straightforward, but I believed in something. And it's amazing when you believe in something, even if you don't have all the experience and all the answers and you don't know what you're doing, that belief can carry you through and push you through a lot of things. I don't like being rejected. I don't like some of the difficulties that come with trying to get something started. But I look back and I just think I was on a mission. I wanted to make a shoe that could grow. Like, that was my mission, and I wanted to get it to the kids back at the orphanage. And so,
Yeah.
and then, when we went viral, I wish I could say that was part of a wonderful marketing strategy and just a wonderful plan that I created. But it was very much, like you said, maybe not by accident. I'm a faith-based guy, and I do believe that God has a hand on our lives, and that He really can. It's kind of cliche, but I do think He opens certain doors, and if we're willing to, work hard and be brave and follow some of the ways that He's leading, I do think that some amazing things can happen. Now, again, it didn't happen overnight. I kind of wish He would have opened the door maybe a little sooner. But when we went viral, we had this attitude that anybody who wants to talk about our shoes, and I didn't care if that person had money or no money, or they were the head of a nonprofit organization that worked with kids, or if they were just a random person in town that I met at a coffee shop. I had this attitude that I will talk about our shoes to anybody, anytime, anywhere. I just wanted to spread the word, and I didn't really care. I didn't have the luxury of choosing the people that I could talk to. I just wanted to talk to anybody. And so I talked to a pastor once at a meeting, and he loved the idea. He asked me to come and share with his senior citizen Sunday school class that had about 8 or 9 people. And I said, sure. So I took the time, I went over and shared with them. And that pastor and he was such a nice man. He and I connected so well that a few weeks later he said, hey, I've got a daughter who works at a news station in Portland, Oregon. And that's where our shoe guys were, the shoe design company. They were in Portland. And so he said, would you ever want to, could I reach out to her and see if she could do a story on you? And I said, sure. Like, I'd go to Portland for that. I would do that. And so she was interested. And so we went and made a little 5-minute, local news segment. And it was great. I got a few emails and a few donations, and I thought I was just super excited about it. But somebody shared the social media version of that news segment on Facebook. Somebody shared that Facebook news segment with one of their friends who was a reporter for BuzzFeed, which BuzzFeed is a large media company, has a great website. And so a reporter from BuzzFeed reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to do a story on your shoes. And that BuzzFeed story was the story that really clicked and made us go viral like overnight. But I can trace it back to me talking to this pastor, going to his Sunday school class, where none of them ever donated, none of them ever did anything, to help us. But I think just this attitude that I'm not sure where our big break is going to come from. I'm not sure where these good things are going to come from. But as far as it depends on me, I'm going to promote and hustle and grind. I'm going to talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. And I'm really glad, looking back, I'm really glad I had that attitude. To some degree, I hope I still have that attitude. But yeah, that's where it all started.
Well, what a great testimony. You talk about passion. I think about the word that comes to mind also is conviction. You had a conviction about it. You're like, I knew, even if Nike and whoever else told me that this wasn't a great idea, I knew this was a great idea. And having that conviction is so important as an entrepreneur and what you do. Now, not delusion. So there's conviction and then
Right.
there's delusion. Like you knew that it would work because you had seen it. So it wasn't a theory. And that definitely I think is key to that. And I love what you said there about just going and talking to anyone, because so often we think, no, I'm not going to go and waste my time talking to just anybody because I want to wait for the big opportunity. But if you don't do the small opportunities, you don't take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way, then you might miss the second degree of opportunity. And just like in your case where it came from that pastor. And so there's this balance between just running around half cocked talking to and wasting your time and then being intentional about it. But I think in our last guest that was on this show was talking about serving, this idea of being in service. And I could feel that from you as well, this idea of I'm in service. And so I go to serve. Yes, I can go talk to your group. I'm going to serve. I'm going to do what I know is right and what in my gut I know is the right thing to do. And as a result of that, like you said, God is going to bless those things. He's going to open those doors. And it's funny because, you think about, well, I wish it happened in the beginning quicker. If it did, then maybe you wouldn't have had such a great story to encourage the next person who it took a lot longer, because if it just
That's
went easy, maybe you wouldn't have,
yeah.
there would have been things that you would have missed along the way. That
That
persistence is so
I
important. And what it's
I
like how
love that.
we grow in the midst of that.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Nicole, because now we've done the Shoe That Grows. That's kind of our main program, but now we just a couple years ago started this accelerator program, helping other global entrepreneurs, people very similar to myself, where they are passionate about a certain solution that they have, a certain idea that they have for a product that could make a difference. So as we come alongside these global entrepreneurs, a lot of it is kind of sharing our story or my story where, yeah, it took me 6 years, it took us 6 years. That's so interesting. I never thought about it that way, that because I hope that is encouraging as we come alongside these other entrepreneurs who have been working on their idea for months, if not years. And we tell them, yeah, you might look at us today and say, wow, what a great organization you have. And you've gotten, so many shoes to kids and everything's going well. But we can tell them, well, for a long time there, nothing really went well. It took us 6 years to really even get this going. And then we still make a ton of mistakes. It's taken us more years to try to build this. And so, yeah, that's, not only the change that needed to happen within me, and the personal growth that I went through during those 6 years, but then just having that experience. So now as I work with other entrepreneurs, to kind of be able to share, like, yep, I've been there. I know what you're going through. I know it takes a while, and you got to keep showing up. You got to keep grinding. You got to keep hustling, and don't think that is too small. Yeah, don't, because hey, we had a small thing and it led to our greatest moment. So I love that, Nicole, and I do think it's but and it's hard. It's hard to do that. If all this stuff was easy, if running a podcast was easy, if coaching and helping leaders was easy, if being an entrepreneur was easy, everybody would do it, right? These things aren't easy, and so you do have to have that conviction, that passion, that mindset where you believe in what you're doing. I think that's one of the biggest things that I tell people is if you've got it, if you're passionate about something, if you love something, if you have a skill and a strength that you just feel, I mean, it just makes you come alive, and well, then don't give up. It's going to be hard. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you've got it, if that's your thing, then then don't give up. It'll happen. It just might not happen when you think it should, and it might not even look like you think it should too. We went through looking at our shoes. I love them today. We went through about 100 different ideas for what this could be. How could a shoe grow? So many different ideas, and even ones that I thought were pretty good, and we ended up not going that direction. Or even little things about our shoes that I might think are certain values and benefits, but as the kids wear them, the kids are saying something different. And so even once you've figured it out, you're still making all kinds of changes. You're still trying to be flexible and trying to make tweaks to be able to make your business, your product, better and better and better. And so it's funny. I think being an entrepreneur, I thought once people had a great idea and they started a business, that they'd kind of arrived. They arrive at this place where everything just is easy and it clicks and it works, and you make money and you do well, and this or that. And every day is not an intense struggle, but every day I'm working hard. Every day we could have a good week, and then the next week I still need to work hard, so we have another good week. We need to. I always tell our team, like, whenever we do something really well, hey, let's celebrate for a minute for sure, but what's next? Because we can't just sit back. We can't sit back and rest. Like, we've got to keep this up, and that's been one of the hardest things about all this. But I'm rambling at this point, Nicole. But oh man, there's so many things to talk about, and this has just been such a fun journey. I could talk for hours, but but I won't do that.
Well, you talk about flexibility, and I was thinking about that when you were talking about this idea of the 100 different ways that you tried to do it. Yes, passion and conviction, but let's also add now flexibility to it, where, like I said, so you're not stuck in delusion saying this is going to work, but not actually getting feedback. So you get the feedback and you figure out and saying, oh, this didn't work, or that didn't work, or this wasn't as comfortable, this shoe that we made as we thought it would be for the people that are actually going to use it, and being able to take that feedback and be flexible enough, knowing that the outcome that you have an outcome in mind. This is what we're looking to create. And do we care what ultimately it looks like to get that? Not really. I mean, we want it to work. I think there's a great lesson in that, and the idea of, like you talked about, now teaching others that same thing. So your accelerator, you've got different products. Maybe there are some products that you think that are at a stage right now where you could share what they're up to, and maybe even give them a little bit of a feature, and tell people what's coming.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. They're one of my favorite ones. So, most of the entrepreneurs we work with are located outside the US. We kind of label them global entrepreneurs, but there are a few people here in the US who are kind of like I was, that live here in the US but have kind of a global idea. And so one of them, she was one of the first entrepreneurs we worked with, and coincidentally, she's here in Idaho as well. But there's a young woman named Peyton McGriff, and Peyton started an organization called Style Her Empowered. Style Her Empowered. They call it She for short. And so she started this organization, She, and the main thing that they do is help girls and women in Togo, Africa, because Peyton went and spent some time in Togo when she was a senior in college, and she wanted to try to find a way to help with girls' education. And she discovered that, especially in rural parts of Togo, one of the main reasons why girls did not stay in school was because of their school uniform. In Togo, there's a required school uniform all across the country. And if the girls' uniform, if they outgrew it, so if it got kind of too short, too small, if they just wore it a lot and it got a little too frayed, or if it was even just too dirty, got too muddy or whatever it was, the girls either wouldn't feel comfortable enough to go to school in that uniform, or for whatever reason, the teachers and administrators wouldn't allow them to come to school wearing a uniform that just didn't look very good. And so it sounds crazy, but in an area where these girls need education so desperately, often one of the biggest challenges to that was having a school uniform that would fit and that could be durable enough to last throughout a whole school year. And so Peyton came back to Idaho, and she tried to work on a solution to that. And she created, and I love this because I love things that grow, but she created a school uniform, a school uniform dress that can grow. It can lengthen about a foot. It's also made of extremely durable material that can last for about 2 school years. And then she made it reversible, so that if it is dirty on one side, and if for some reason it's difficult for the girls to clean it, they can reverse it and wear it on the other side. And so she made this wonderful school uniform. She started this organization to support it. And then Peyton found out about us. She didn't know about what we were doing, but she found out about us, started chatting with us, and we got her into our accelerator program. It's been so fun to come alongside Peyton. She's such a dynamic leader, and she would have made this happen without us. But what we've been able to do with Peyton is, from our experience with our shoes, we've been able to come alongside her, help her think about manufacturing, think about the design a little bit more, and then especially think about the distribution. How can she fund this program? How can she, support this so that more girls can have these uniforms? And we've just been able to help Peyton, I think, get to kind of the finish line just a little bit faster, with fewer headaches, and maybe save a little money in the process. And it's been so fun for us to mentor Peyton and really come alongside her and her ministry. It's amazing. And one cool thing she's doing now, she not only has these great school uniforms, but like talking about outcomes, Peyton didn't necessarily care about a uniform necessarily. She wanted girls to be in school. And so one thing that she was able to do was really listen to the girls through her program. And one other reason why the girls would often drop out of school or miss a lot of school had to do with their monthly period. They just didn't have the period resources to take care of themselves in such a way that they could still attend school. And so Peyton now uses the excess material as she makes these uniforms and does her cutting and different things. She uses the excess material to make menstrual pads that she then gives to the girls as well. And so Peyton is just a rock star. She's finding all these different ways to achieve that outcome, which really is where her passion is. That's where her conviction is. She wants to help girls stay in school, and I love coming alongside and helping her out. And then for us, it's not necessarily about the shoes. It's how can we help kids stay healthy more often, attend school more often. Sometimes they need shoes as part of a school uniform requirement. How can we just help kids be in the best position to succeed? And so I do think it's so important to stay focused on that outcome and not as much, it's a means to an end, right? Let's focus on that end, and let's find some means to get there. We got to get there somehow, but it might not look exactly like what you thought, and that's okay. I've had that, and I think other entrepreneurs could attest to that as well. And so, yeah, we love working with Peyton and so many of our entrepreneurs to help them achieve that final outcome, to help them make the difference that they're really passionate about.
Well, and you mentioned a word there, ministry. It was her ministry, and it also with you. And it comes right back to what's the outcome? Why are you doing this? To serve. And I would just love you to talk a little bit about it, because I know your organization isn't in itself faith-based. However, you are demonstrating love, God's love, in the products that you're that you're creating and that you're helping other people create. So tell us a little bit about how you do that and practically demonstrate that. I'm just
Yeah, that's
thinking
a
about others that may have, this
yeah,
kind of like, well, does my organization have to be faith-based and have this big sign
right,
over it? Or,
right.
can I do it
Yeah,
in the thing
that's
that
a
I'm
great
already doing right
question.
now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for us, in the early days, as I put together the paperwork to start our nonprofit organization, I hope I was thoughtful about it. I tried to be thoughtful about it, and the biggest thing for me was I want to work with every kid. I think every kid needs a good pair of shoes, and to me, I didn't mind if they were in a church or in a ministry or at a Christian orphanage or not. I just wanted to work with kids, of all backgrounds and all places. And so for us, it was the right choice to not be a explicitly faith-based organization. Although faith is a huge part of my life. Many people on our team, although not all, but many people on our team, it's a huge motivation for them as well. And so for me, I love it. I want kids and their families, and then now these entrepreneurs that we work with, I want them to have every chance to experience the fullness of life. And some people use the word flourishing or the word thrive. I mean, we want to get them shoes so that their feet and their bodies can be protected, and they can be healthy, and they can attend school and do everything that a kid needs to do. My hope is that through that, they can have more opportunities to experience God, to experience love, to experience the beauty of creation, and to find what they're good at in life, and to live a wonderful life. And how can a shoe be a part of that? I think it can be a very small part of that. And we always say our shoes don't solve every problem, but we think they're a small thing that can make a big difference. And so I'm hoping that we can be a small part of a child's life. And my hope would then also be that they could find ways to connect to God, and connect to creation, connect to themselves. Now we don't have to do every part of that, and that's probably something I've honestly I've probably wrestled with that a little bit. Should we be more intentional? Should we be a faith-based organization? Should that be, should sharing the gospel be an explicit part of our mission? I've never really felt like it has to be. We work with a lot of churches, with a lot of faith-based organizations. We have so many wonderful donors who are faith-based, and that's a huge motivation for them, and that's awesome. And they support our shoes as our shoes then get to kids, and hopefully, again, that's just part of a solution that can help kids have just be in a better position to be able to have a full life. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that I just didn't ever want to limit what we did. And I think everybody knows, sometimes people can view faith in lots of different ways. Some people, that is a safe place. That's an encouraging word. That is they really believe in churches and Christianity and things like that. For other people, it's a difficult word. It's a difficult space to think about or to participate with. And so I just wanted to work with everybody, and I didn't want to have any barriers, and I wanted to work with every kid and every organization and just everybody. And I'm sure there are some opportunities that we've lost because of that, and I'm sure there are some opportunities we've gained because of that. But I know that anything I do, I'm going to bring my faith into it. Some things, like I used to be a pastor. I'm still an ordained minister, and I still do that, and obviously that's much more explicitly faith-based. But there are other things I do that I'm a little quieter about my faith, and I'm not sure there's a one-size-fits-all answer. But if any of your listeners ever have any questions about how to structure a business, how to set up an organization, or just the work that they're doing, how to incorporate their faith, I'd be very happy to chat with anybody about kind of how we think about that and how I think about that personally.
Yeah, I love that. And that is actually one of the things, even with leaders of transformation, is that, and my coaching is working with anyone. And Jesus wasn't discerning and saying, oh, did you go to synagogue last week?
Right.
He actually went and served and healed the sick and, all of that. And then as a result of that, people wanted to hear more about it. And so often I think, there are some negative connotations because people have tried to force it or finagle people into a situation where they didn't want to be and had a negative experience. But ultimately, what did God call us to do? To love him and to love one another as ourselves. So to love one another can look a lot of different ways. And when you think about those shoes, I think about those kids going, wow, somebody took the time to figure out how to make a shoe that grows. And that shoe represents when they put it on, it's like, wow, somebody thought about me. Somebody
Mhm.
thought about us. That's love. And if we can do that, well, that's a little piece in the whole puzzle on the journey of their life that they know that somebody cared enough. Who knows where that goes down the road, and like you said, even connecting them to God, connecting them to creation, and even the creative process on
Right.
what they might go on, get some education, and then say, hey, what can I do to, to help my community, to help my village and or the world as well. So I think there's huge ramifications from that. One of the things that we have on our website right from the beginning, I wanted to have these ripples of impact showing water ripples going out, because you don't know that one stone that you place in the water, it doesn't
Right.
matter if it's a small stone or it's a big stone, it's going to make a ripple, and that ripple is going to go out. And then, of course, as the more stones in the water, the more ripples we have. And so I just appreciate you and what you're doing, and not just the one, but now you're actually helping others to be able to create ripples of impact as well. And so it's very powerful. So thank you. I appreciate it, Kenton. And we'll make sure that there's a link to your website. So when you mentioned about people reaching out to you, leadersoftransformation.com, on that website, of course, we have all our episodes. We'll make sure your website, becauseinternational.org, is linked there, as well as your social links and so forth, so that they can get connected to you and those that might be even looking at getting involved in your accelerator program. I know even on that website, you also have where people want to donate. They want to donate to and support the cause. So we'll make sure that that's there, that people can do that. And I always say that leaders of transformation take action. Inspiration, information, all of it's wonderful, but unless we do something about it, nothing happens. So that's where it starts, is to take action and do something. And so I encourage our listeners, to start to think, maybe there's an idea that you put on the shelf and you gave up on because it had been a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you're like, oh, it's probably not going to go anywhere. Maybe you need to dust that off. If it's still kind of comes to mind every once in a while, and there's a little glimmer of passion there, maybe you need to stir that up. And you just never know what a little idea can do, how a little solution can make a huge global impact. And literally, and it's not even just the shoes, it's what those people are going to do with that ripple of impact continues on generation to generation. So I encourage you that. And we'd love to hear your story. So you can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can find us there. You can go and follow us on social and reach out to us. We'd love to hear the things that you're doing, the ideas that you have, and anywhere we can support you in that, we'd love to do that. So again, thank you for watching and listening. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.